My name is Dr. Naomi Carter, and up until recently, I thought I had everything I needed in life. I worked as a physician in Portland, Oregon, managing a thriving career in a bustling ER. My life revolved around saving others, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, and planning for what I thought was a bright future. But on December 10th, 2022, everything changed. That day started like any other. It was a rainy Saturday morning, typical for Portland in December. The hospital was busy, as always, with patients filling the ER. I spent the morning rushing from room to room, juggling patient charts, and sipping lukewarm coffee that I barely had time to taste. I remember glancing out the window during a rare pause, watching the relentless rain pound against the glass. Normally, the rain felt calming to me, but that day, I couldn't shake a strange sense of unease. It was a heaviness I couldn't explain, but I brushed it off, telling myself it was just stress. At 11:42 a.m., while reviewing a patient's file at the nurse's station, I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my chest. I barely had time to register what was happening before the world around me tilted. My vision blurred, and a wave of dizziness overtook me. The next thing I knew, I was collapsing onto the floor. Despite being someone who never smoked, rarely drank, and jogged regularly, I had suffered a massive heart attack. Later, I learned my heart had stopped for 10 minutes. But in those 10 minutes, I wasn't gone, I was somewhere else entirely. The moment I hit the floor, the chaos of the ER disappeared. The sounds of monitors, voices, and hurried footsteps faded into silence. In an instant, I found myself in a completely different place, one that words can barely describe. I was surrounded by light. Not the kind of light we experience on Earth, but something far more vibrant and alive. This light wasn't just bright. It radiated warmth, peace, and love. It enveloped me like the softest embrace, erasing all traces of fear and pain. As I stood there, I realized I was no longer in my physical body. I felt weightless, free, and more alive than I had ever been. My senses were heightened, and I could feel everything around me with an intensity that was almost overwhelming. I looked around, taking in the beauty of this place. The ground beneath me shimmered like glass, reflecting the light in dazzling patterns. The air seemed to hum with a melody, soft and gentle, yet powerful enough to stir something deep within my soul. Then I felt it, a presence unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was both comforting and awe-inspiring, filling the entire space with an undeniable sense of love and authority. I turned, and there he was, Jesus Christ. Words can't fully capture what it was like to stand in his presence. He radiated light, not just around him, but from within him. His eyes held infinite compassion and understanding, and his face reflected a love so deep it brought tears to my eyes. "Naomi," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "you are here for a reason. There is something I must show you." As Jesus spoke, the scene around us began to change. The shimmering beauty of the heavenly realm faded, and I found myself standing in what looked like a bustling city. The streets were filled with people, their faces lit by towering holographic screens that displayed advertisements for a sleek, implantable device. It was a small chip, designed to be placed in the hand or forehead, and the promises it offered were alluring: convenience, security, and access to a better life. The advertisements showed people scanning their hands to pay for groceries, access buildings, and even receive medical care. It was marketed as the ultimate solution to the world's problems, a way to eliminate poverty, fraud, and inequality. But as I watched, an overwhelming sense of dread filled me. The excitement on people's faces was a stark contrast to the darkness I could feel emanating from the chip. It was as if an invisible chain was wrapping around each person who received it. Jesus turned to me, his expression both sorrowful and resolute. "Naomi," he said, "this is the mark of the beast." The weight of his words hit me like a tidal wave. I had read about the mark of the beast in the Bible, but seeing it in this vision was something entirely different. Jesus revealed to me the true nature of this mark. It wasn't just a physical device. It was a spiritual declaration. Those who accepted the mark weren't just choosing convenience. They were pledging their allegiance to a system of control that was deeply rooted in darkness. The mark represented a rejection of God and an embrace of deception. I watched as more and more people lined up to receive it, their excitement masking the spiritual consequences of their choice. Once they took the mark, I could see a change in them. A darkness clouded their eyes, and the light of their souls seemed to fade. Jesus showed me how the enemy was using deception to make the mark seem harmless, even beneficial. Influential leaders, celebrities, and even religious figures endorsed it, convincing the masses that it was the key to a brighter future. The enemy's strategy was subtle but effective. He played on people's fears, promising safety and security in exchange for their freedom. Those who refused the mark were ostracized, unable to buy or sell, and cut off from society. "Many will be deceived," Jesus said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Even those who call themselves my followers will be tempted to take it. They will justify it in their minds, saying it's just technology. But they do not see the spiritual chains they are placing upon themselves." As I continued to watch, Jesus allowed me to see the spiritual battle taking place behind the scenes. What looked like a simple choice in the physical world was, in reality, a war for the hearts and souls of humanity. I saw dark forces whispering lies into the ears of leaders and influencers, manipulating them to push this agenda. These forces weren't grotesque or terrifying in appearance. They were subtle, calculated, and seductive, planting seeds of deception that grew into full-blown lies. But I also saw the light. Scattered throughout the world were believers who refused to take the mark, standing firm in their faith despite the persecution they faced. These individuals were lights in the darkness, their prayers and faith pushing back against the enemy's plans. After showing me the devastating consequences of the mark of the beast, Jesus turned to me with a look of both love and urgency. His eyes held the weight of the mission he was about to give me, and his words pierced straight into my soul. "Naomi," he said, "this is why you are here. You must warn my people. The time is coming when they will have to make a choice, and many will not be prepared. They must know the truth so that they will not be deceived." I felt the gravity of his words settle over me. This wasn't just a warning for the distant future, it was for now. Jesus made it clear that the spirit of deception was already at work in the world, preparing the way for the system I had just witnessed. He explained that the mark wouldn't appear all at once. Instead, it would be introduced in stages, each step designed to condition people to accept it without question. "The enemy is cunning," Jesus said, "He will make it seem harmless, even beneficial, but my people must remain vigilant. They must seek me above all else." Although much of what Jesus showed me was sobering, he also gave me a vision of hope. He showed me how even in the darkest times, his light would shine through his faithful followers. I saw small groups of believers gathering in homes, fields, and hidden places, worshiping God with a boldness that defied the fear and oppression around them. These were the ones who refused to take the mark, who stood firm in their faith despite the cost. Their prayers were like beams of light that pierced through the darkness, pushing back the enemy's influence. Jesus reminded me that the enemy's power is limited, and that no matter how dark the world becomes, his light will never be extinguished. "Those who stand with me will be victorious," he said. "The battle has already been won." As the vision began to fade, I felt a deep longing to stay in the presence of Jesus. The love, peace, and safety I felt in his presence were unlike anything I had ever experienced. But I also knew that my mission wasn't finished. "Naomi," Jesus said, placing his hand on my shoulder, "it is not your time yet. You must return and tell them what you have seen. Share my words and do not be afraid. I am with you always." In an instant, the light around me disappeared, and I felt myself being pulled back into my body. The overwhelming peace was replaced by the harsh reality of pain and confusion as I woke up in the ER. When I opened my eyes, I was surrounded by the familiar chaos of the ER. Flashing monitors, hurried footsteps, and the concerned faces of my colleagues. One of the nurses leaned over me, tears streaming down her face. "Naomi, you're back," she said softly. I later learned that my heart had stopped for 10 minutes, and my colleagues had been performing CPR the entire time. The fact that I survived without brain damage or lasting complications was nothing short of a miracle. Physically, I was weak and exhausted, but spiritually, I felt more alive than ever. The memory of the vision was as vivid as if it had just happened. I knew I had been given a second chance and I couldn't waste it. In the days and weeks that followed, I spent countless hours reflecting on what I had seen. Every detail, every word Jesus spoke, was etched into my mind. At first, I struggled with how to share my experience. Would people believe me? Would they think I was crazy? But then I remembered Jesus' command, "Tell them what you have seen." It wasn't about whether people believed me. It was about obedience. I knew I had been entrusted with this message for a reason, and I couldn't keep it to myself. The vision changed everything about my life. I could no longer go back to my old routines, pretending that everything was fine. My priorities shifted completely, and I felt an urgency to draw closer to God like never before. I started sharing my testimony with close friends and family. Some were moved to tears, while others seemed skeptical. But no matter the reaction, I kept sharing, knowing that this message wasn't mine to keep. As word spread, I was invited to speak at churches and community gatherings. Each time, I prayed for God's guidance, asking Him to give me the words to say. I wanted people to understand the seriousness of the times we're living in and the importance of staying grounded in faith. One of the most important lessons Jesus taught me during the vision was the need for spiritual preparation. He emphasized that the time to prepare is now, not when the mark appears, but long before. "Build your foundation on me," he said. "When the storms come, Those who stand on the rock will not be shaken. Jesus explained that preparation isn't about fear, it's about trust. It's about deepening our relationship with Him, spending time in prayer and studying His Word. It's about recognizing the subtle deceptions of the enemy and choosing to follow truth, even when it's difficult. He also reminded me of the power of community. My people must stand together, he said. Encourage one another, pray for one another, and hold fast to my promises. If there's one thing I want people to take away from my testimony, it's this. The enemy's greatest weapon is deception. He will make the mark seem harmless, even beneficial, but its spiritual consequences are eternal. Jesus is calling each of us to open our eyes, to seek Him with all our hearts, and to stand firm in His truth. The battle we face is not just physical, it's spiritual. But we don't have to fight it alone. Jesus has already won the victory, and He is with us every step of the way. If my story has touched your heart, I encourage you to take it seriously. Spend time in prayer, ask Jesus to reveal His truth to you, and commit your life to Him. Now is the time to prepare. Not out of fear, but out of faith and trust in His promises. Please share this video with others, like and subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment about how God has been working in your life. Together, we can spread His light and bring hope to a world that desperately needs it.